What comes to mind when you think adventure film? Perhaps Indiana Jones? But what about Star Wars, James Cameron's Avatar, Toy Story? Those films are adventure films too. But what is an adventure film? Adventure stories are usually heroic, even when the character is ordinary. Fast-paced with lots of action, overcoming larger-than-life obstacles, and takes us to exotic places. There are many films in the adventure genre, and a lot of them are split into subgenres as well. But what is it about the film that makes it adventure? Much like an action film, the story is dominated by the action. There's a sense of danger, a high risk in the story, and the excitement that comes from it. Will Indiana Jones be able to outrun the boulder after triggering the trap, or will he get crushed by it? Realistically, being chased by a giant boulder in an ancient cave will never happen, but it's so extraordinary compared to real life that it's exciting. Adventure films are categorized by survival, or putting a lot of focus on scenery and being outdoors, or exploring an environment the protagonist is unfamiliar with. While the protagonists of adventure films have been traditionally male, many films in recent years in the adventure genre have had a female protagonist. Usually, when there are children in an adventure film, the situations they end up in require them to think fast, call on their inner strength and problem-solving skills, and they somehow always end up unsupervised by adults. But most importantly, the entire adventure the protagonist goes on, enduring hardships, meeting people, and conquering obstacles, changes the character for the better. Okay, so, it was mentioned earlier that there are lots of subgenres. What are they? It will probably take hours to talk about how all of these subgenres are different, so let's focus instead on how they're the same. Let's focus on just 3 films for now. Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, Moana, and The Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. These films are categorized as action-adventure, musical comedy-adventure, and fantasy-adventure, respectively. Let's talk about theme. Themes are messages that films share about the world in general, or subject matter that influences the entire narrative of the story. For adventure films, this tends to include the protagonist being pulled from his usual, normal, ordinary life. Then the protagonist goes off on a journey through new, fantastical worlds, usually while carrying or in search of an object of power. This is Indiana Jones being approached at Marshall College and starting on his quest for the Ark of the Covenant. This is Moana leaving her home of Motunui to cross the ocean and restore the heart of Te Fiti. This is Frodo Baggins leaving the Shire to bring the One Ring to Mordor. But what about characters? Stock characters are usually flat and one-dimensional characters, usually stereotypes or archetypes that appear over and over in films. Archetypes are recurring patterns of human behavior. They're used in movies and other forms of fiction and storytelling because they're easily recognizable. There are, of course, the heroes. They're the most important character. The story revolves around them. This is Indy, Moana, and Frodo. Then there are the shadows. These are the bad guys, the villains. The shadow doesn't always have to be a character either. It can be the hero's grief or anger, manifesting in destructive ways that become obstacles to the hero. In our examples, the Nazis are in direct opposition to Indy's getting the Ark. Moana's self-doubt almost makes her give up. And Sauron's forces, the orcs and ringwraiths, attempt to stop the hobbits. The herald character is the one who calls the protagonist out onto their adventure. They're the ones that get the hero to go on his journey, giving them the final push they need to get out there. We can see this archetype in Raiders of the Lost Ark as the army intelligence officers who tell Indy that the Nazis are looking for his old mentor, Abner Ravenwood. It's Moana's grandmother handing her the heart of Te Fiti and telling her the ocean chose her to restore it and leading her to the cave of her ancestors. And then there's Gandalf, who simply knocks on the door. The ever-important ally characters are the sidekicks. These guys stick to the hero and help them on their journey. Sometimes when the hero is at his lowest point, the sidekick will be there to pick him right back up. Or in the case of Frodo, be literally carried. It's figures like Salah, the best digger in Egypt, Maui, shapeshifter, demigod of the wind and sea, hero of man, and of course, everybody needs a Sam. Next is iconography. It's an important aspect of genre and is used within film to describe the visual language of cinema. They are repeating images seen throughout individual films and help characterize the characters, environment, and other things. One iconography of adventure films is the object of power that drives the protagonist on his quest. It's the reason the hero leaves his home and goes on an adventure. It's the force that drives him. There's also the expansive environment that is new to the protagonist, somewhere to explore and look around in awe. As soon as you see the establishing shot of a new environment, you just know it's gonna be an adventure. And don't forget the props we've come to associate with the genre. It could be guns, whips, bows and arrows, swords and axes, torches to explore dark caves, unnatural monsters to fight. Mood is the emotional setting of the film. There is always an excitement associated with adventure films. There's so many new things to see, people to meet, treasure to find, and that giddiness to start an adventure that is so different from the mundane, ordinary life the protagonist started out with. Like Indy going to a new country to find a mythical relic, or Moana finally getting to answer the call of the sea and sail across the ocean, or the hobbits leaving the Shire when supposedly no hobbits ever leave or go on adventures at all. The mise-en-scène is very important to a film in the adventure genre. The elaborate locations and the shots used to establish them to the audience are key to setting up the rest of the story. It wouldn't be so important to leave the Shire if the audience didn't know what the Shire was. When talking about cinematic styles in conjunction with adventure films, there must always be an extreme long shot or any number of wide-angle establishing shots. A long shot establishes the Nazi dig camp in the background, while Indiana Jones and his crew start the dig at the correct location of the Well of Souls, and shows off the rest of the desert city of Tanis. High-angle aerials show the village and island of Moana's home in its entirety, and the light as it shines on the sea. Gentle panning establishes the peaceful and beautiful area of Hobbiton and the Shire, as Bilbo Baggins narrates how quiet the life of a hobbit is. The use of background music also helps to establish the adventure-y feel of the film. Indiana Jones's iconic theme always plays when Indy does something particularly heroic and action-packed, like when using his whip to swing over a pit, or while galloping quickly down the street in pursuit of Nazis. The soft violin and orchestral score accompanies the Fellowship on their adventures through Middle-earth. A lot goes into making an adventure film, and no matter what subgenre it might have, with all these elements, you can spot an adventure film right away. And since there are so many films already made, and even more being produced every year, you can go on your own adventure to discover and watch them yourself.